Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Case Kenny. I'm this week's Man of the Hour. Just talked with Justin about my favorite topics, the power of mindfulness, the power of honesty, life transformation, leaving a 9 to 5 to pursue a passion in life. It was a great chat. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, friends, it's Justin. And right now on the Men of the Hour podcast, I'm joined by Case Kenny. And as we hit episode 99, I wanted to bring a special friend to the show, which now, friend, is a very small world. We know a lot of the same people for the right reasons. And I'm excited to bring Case on right now. He's an entrepreneur. He's a mindfulness expert, host and founder of the Top 25 podcast, New Mindset, Who Dis? And having been featured on such shows as Good Morning America, you might recognize him from his viral coffee cup and post-it quotes on Instagram, which have turned him into a social phenomenon. And I am going to be so excited to present to you an incredible conversation right now with him. So Case, thank you for saying yes to join me right now.
Of course, man. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, if we're not friends now, I have a feeling we'll be. We got a lot in common, good vibes too. So thanks for having me on. It means a lot.
I'm excited. So before I start asking all the questions, and you know how the shindig goes with podcasting here, I did want to bring up that I think the world is so small, particularly for us, though. I feel like you and I have the same friends in common, but for reasons that I think are because we know the same people who are doing such good things. And if you would agree to that, I want to kind of bring up like Brian Ford, for instance. I had just met him, and it was through very similar circles of him just doing good and needing a little bit of assistance with connecting folks. And as soon as we brought your name up, I was like, wait, he's coming on the Men of the Hour. And then Brian also has a great podcast, right? And so, yeah, would you say that that's kind of how you're always getting connected to folks, is just by knowing the right people doing the right things?
Yeah, man. I mean, Brian Ford is like embodies goodness. Like the dude is just an absolute legend. He's like the most selfless guy ever. And yeah, and like, yeah, I try to connect with good people. And it's funny too. I look back like who I used to want to connect with previously, and it's so different than who I want to connect with now. So it's cool to like see the embodiment of like your vision for yourself reflected in who you want to connect with and the people that you do. So, I mean, that's everything to me. I mean, it's just cool to find people who are doing cool things, and just like what they represent. And like, those are the people that I want to associate with. Brian being one, you being another. And then it's cool. It's like the world's smaller than we think. Like those people all know each other, which is great.
And we could certainly bring that back up later. I think that the most popular saying about what you had just alluded to is that you're the sum of the company that you keep around. And so as we start hitting topics with you, such as mindset, motivation, transformation, I think it'll be important to realize the circles that you're keeping yourself in as you've transformed. And you, my friend, after reading, and I told Case this, I'm so honest on this podcast because I don't give a foot. And I'm kidding. But I was super honest. I was like, dude, I just about 2 hours ago grabbed my coffee. I'm here in LA, and I came to this place called Soho Works and sat down. I was just researching and reading and listening and just super in your world for 2 hours. And what's crazy is you've built this of what Case Kenny is now doing in just like a year, right? You had been in not banking, but you had been in the finance sales world prior to this. So I want to start there with you. And if you can kind of walk us through what that journey was like when you had kicked things off in 2021 to now be an entrepreneur, a podcaster, a self-help guru, a mindset expert. Like, these are such incredible things you've built, but only since 2021. So where did that transformation happen for you? Why did that transformation happen for you?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say, man, 2 hours being in my world for 2 hours, man, bless you. That's
with three. This is another hour.
now you're getting the rest. Let's hope it goes. Let's hope it goes well for you. I don't know if I can listen to myself for 3 hours, but yeah, man. I mean, it's like, so like I've been writing online in some fashion since like 2014. Like I've always been a big reader and writer and just like creative guy. Like I need to express myself in some way. But to your point of what I'm doing now, like my quote profession, my purpose, my passion is so different from what it used to be. I worked in technology sales for the last 8 years for the same company for 8 years. And before that, I worked in advertising too. So call it, 11 years corporate, the last 8 being with a company. And I ran the team. I had a bunch of people that reported to me. It was aggressive technology sales, high risk, high stress, but also high reward, which is what kept me around. And I did that for 8 years. 8 years at a company in this day and age, being a millennial, the job hoppers extraordinaire, is a long time. And I was there for 8 years, and I quit that at the end of last year, actually. So I built what I have now, half in and half out, while working at that company. But ultimately, I decided to go all in on this. And what this is I started a podcast in late 2018 called New Mindset Who Dis. And it was just a challenge to myself. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and I was like, who is Case? Who is Case outside of a relationship? And then also at the time, I was like, man, I just feel like my identity is my job. So I was like, who is Case outside of a relationship, and who is Case outside of my job? And I was like, I'm just going to ask myself questions on the podcast, keep it short and sweet. And I'm going to give my opinion on how I can better become a better man, friend, everything. And I did that, and it started to go really, really well, started to blow up. But to your point, things really didn't blow up until late 2020. And that was when I launched a series of mindfulness journals, one mindfulness journal, really. And long story short, everything went nuts from there. And ultimately, a year into that, I quit my job, and I'm doing this full time. But I just kept like pulling on that string of mindfulness, and I'm happy to talk about like my brand of mindfulness. But the podcast, the quotes, the journals, the business, everything kind of exploded in the past year. And I think it's no coincidence that the past year I was like, man, I'm going to go all in on this. And, here we are. Lots of changes for me, certainly, but it's been in a short amount of time, which is kind of crazy to think about.
You're a fast activator, it sounds like, too. I mean, you've hit on something here, which is that I want to go back for a moment. You had been halfway in and halfway out. I was the same way. I'm about to leave NBC, and I can openly say that. And when you do something around not yourself, obviously Case Kenny is the brand of all 5 or 6 of those things you had just mentioned, between podcast, journals, you being a personality in and of yourself, the quotes on Instagram, like all of that is Case Kenny, and as you had built out probably the podcast first, I'm assuming you said in 2018. So then from there, it's like, all right, well, now Case Kenny has so much more to offer the world, and you can't offer that if you're in a full-time job doing something for 40 hours a week, like sales. And so, before we continue on the road of New Mindset Who Dis, because literally, I mean, listen, if I'm going to say you're an expert, you are an expert at this stuff, because you've done it for so long, and you've helped so many people with what I would consider is mastering the mindset, really knowing when to tap in and out of it and transform it, change it, and all those great things. So we'll get into that in a second, but go back with us for a moment when you were halfway in and halfway out. How hard was that? Hypothetically, how many hours were you really working? Was it stressful? Why was it stressful? Like, can you just tell us a little bit about that halfway in, halfway out between a full-time job in sales and then doing your own thing, which is now the full-time thing?
Yeah. So I have pretty strong opinions about this. Everyone has an opinion. You talk to Gary Vee, and he's like, no, you quit your job and you're all in or you're all out. And that's a vibe for sure. Like, I dig that. That's cool, man. For me, I'm a very practical person. And I knew, and I recognize it now more than ever, that if you make decisions without leverage, you end up making poor decisions in the future. Namely, if I had quit my job when I first started the podcast, because of course I knew this was my passion, I knew this was what I wanted to do. If I had quit immediately, I know I would have made decisions that ultimately I would have regret. Namely, I would have taken on any sponsor. I would have done anything just to keep the boat floating. But I was like, I want to create a business and a brand from a place of leverage. So I'm like, I am going to continue working this job. I'm going to stack money in my bank account, so I never have to take a loan. I never have to take on, equity partners, and so that I can just move the ship forward. So I did that for a while from that place, knowing that eventually I wanted to do this full time and full passion. I was like, in the meantime, though, I'm going to be smart and practical, and I'm going to build both concurrently. And I did that. And I did that from a place of practicality, but also like I had a great scenario where my skills were very centered, like there's a lot of synergy between them. Like working in sales teaches you so much, and I used that skill set to build my brand as well. So like, the only conflicting thing was my identity. I was very wrapped up in making money, being a sales guy, but then having this side of me that really wanted to be an artist and a creator and like softer. And that was where the conflict was. So it was like, when I finally did quit, it wasn't like, oh, finally I can like do what I want to do. It was more like I can finally be who I want to be. And like, that was the big difference for me. And, but I think working for 8 years at a job is a long time. I think
Yeah.
ultimately I wish I could have like scrunched that down to maybe like 5, but I'm
Mhm.
almost 34 now. I think it was the smartest thing I could have done. Cause like now I can like, I've got money in the bank. The business is doing great because I was
Oh yeah, I love
patient
that.
and not like rushing. But that's my
Mhm.
experience. Like I encourage people to jump when they're ready to jump, but like don't be pressured by the hustle culture that says if you're all out, if you're halfway out, you're all out. You need to be all in, that kind of vibe. I think for me, it was just like that patience really,
Mm.
really served me.
You bring up a great point, which is you're on your own timeline. You should kind of you should do these things when they mean the most to you. When you discovered that there was a missing part of your identity, not a missing part, but there was question marks around your identity, and doing this now full time has helped that. And then that, like, you helping yourself is now helping everyone else. And so we have to go into
Yeah,
the new mindset who dis, because that's it,
that's
that's
it.
what's helping everybody.
Yeah.
And so between 2018 and now, how would you say the podcast has benefited both you and those who are listening from a mindset perspective, of course?
Yeah. Well, so I joke that the podcast is my therapy. I have a therapist that I go to, but for me, every time I hop on here and I do it twice a week, and it takes me like probably 3 hours an app. So for at least 6 hours a week, I am in the weeds doing mindfulness at minimum, and then everything else I'm doing. So I mean, I'm doing 60 hours a week here, but that is my therapy. It is so helpful for me. So it's like I've got the most privileged, perfect scenario where I'm helping other people, but ultimately I'm helping myself in the process. And that is so incredibly rewarding. On the helping other people side, it's like I try to not associate myself with words like expert and coach and this and that. It's natural, of course, to want to assign those things, and I will take them, but I never introduce
Sure.
myself that way. But what I think I am an expert at is simplifying things. It's a weird skill to have. It's
Ooh,
not on
it's a
any list of
powerful one.
skills. I think it's incredibly powerful. And what I found about myself and what I realized through 8 years of working at this job, I was like, man, you know what? Like, I am just like very even keeled. Like, I am a hardwired optimist. Why? What is it about the way that I look at the world that makes me see the upside rather than the downside? What is it about the way that view things that makes me assume positive intent rather than some kind of
Hmm.
cynical assumption? What is it about me? And I was like, that is what I'm going to share on the podcast. And you know what? And I kept pulling. I was like, man, that's what I'm good at. So that's what I do on the podcast every day. It's like, I joke that I state the obvious every single day. I repeat cliches. I give the 10 commandments. It is easy stuff. But the way that I do it, I think is simplified. And maybe it's the way that I present it that helps people. And that's what everyone says. They say it's relatable, it's real, it's not preachy. And I wouldn't know any other way, because all I do is I try to share from my experience, which is through my eyeballs, is very simple. And it helps me. So I turn around, I try to help people.
Mm.
And lo and behold, here we are in a world where it helps other people, and I get to share my feelings for a living. That's what I joke. I say I share my feelings for a living. And that's what I do.
I
That's great.
love that. That's cool, because I tell people I interview people for a living. Similarly, you get to do
Yeah.
what you're just doing what you do.
Yeah.
And it somehow turns into this stuff. And I think because we had both worked in sales a little bit, you kind of know how to monetize what you need to, which that's 2.0. You and I can talk about that like in the summertime when people are trying to leave their jobs. So, which I do want you back on uh, a show that, like a podcast of some kind or anything else that's coming in the future. Like, we're going to have to get Alex to keep pitching you to me. So I think, which by the way is one of my favorite publicists in this business.
Oh yeah.
Mindset though. So new mindset, who does, when I get it where you are. Number one, I'm happy for you that it's taking care of you, because that's what this does to me. Hearing what you just said, I don't need to go call a therapist right now. I can listen to you. That was very therapeutic to hear. I think now when someone is going to click play, what are they expecting to get out of it? So for instance, I know that you have probably a very regimented and strategic way that you are prepping the episodes, but what's the intention behind it, and ultimately the goal for the listener to get out of each episode?
Yeah. So it's usually I will have something that I want to prove to you. You are not unlovable. You
Mm.
deserve this. Your worth is this, something like that. I have a thesis statement that, again, is obvious that we all want to believe. But then what I try to do is I try to provide logical evidence to show you why it's true. Like that's my whole thing. Like I talk a lot about mindfulness. I do a lot of speaking on mindfulness. In my world, there's like two variations of mindfulness. There's a very like ethereal type mindfulness. That's mindfulness that talks about the things you can't see, but you need to believe. It talks a lot about energies and frequencies and, chakras and things like that. And I think that's fantastic. It's not my brand of mindfulness though. My brand of mindfulness is very logical. It is very evidence and observation based. I can see this in my life, therefore I can believe this to be true. I have this experience in my past, therefore I believe this to be true. That is what I love to do. And so in these episodes, I'll say, here's what I want to prove, and here's how I'm going to do it. And then I either provide questions for listeners to ask themselves, or I'll point out aspects of their life and I'll say, look to this, now ask yourself this and prove this. And I've done it 300 and some times, because we all have evidence of things in our life that supports higher truths, supports perspectives of optimism and kindness and empathy, these things that we want to believe. But sometimes the hustle and bustle, the rush of life distracts us from the truths that are right in front of us. So I think it's my job to help simplify the way that we look at life, to zoom in on certain aspects of our life and then zoom back out to prove why it's true of some more compassionate element of ourselves. So it's like maybe I should have been a lawyer or something. It's like, here's the evidence, here's the verdict. Like why, like, let's connect the dots. So like, doesn't sound as sexy as like your energy is vibrating. But it works.
Sure.
It really works.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So you say connect the dots, and then I need to ask the opposite, which is what do you think the disconnect is between someone who wants a positive, you're optimist by nature. That's like in both of our DNA.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to get to this place. But in order to get to this place, you need to do some connecting. And so where, if at all, there's a disconnect for someone to reach what I would consider a state of oasis, or like just a nice mindset, having like optimism and positive habits and chasing good goals with good reason and doing good for people. These are all mindset hacks that I know people are listening to your podcast. Maybe this one, right? This is more your narrative, right? Which I love, but your show is particularly driven on like the things people can actually do and understand and zoom out and in, like you just said. So back to the question, the disconnect, where have you found that to be for most people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things. I could talk forever about why aren't we happy? Why aren't we this? Why am I frustrating in my dating life? I think there's all kinds of lenses that you kind of have to shift in and out depending on the circumstance. I will say ultimately, like, I am really, really big on the power of words, the words we speak and the words that we tell ourselves, and namely the stories that we tell ourselves. I find, to answer your question, the disconnect between what we know to be true, but the assumption and the conclusion we ultimately make. What is getting in the way of those two things, right? Like we have a bad relationship, and then the conclusion we arrive at is that we're unlovable, where in reality, we know that failed love doesn't mean we're unlovable. We know that it just means lack of connectability. We know that to be true, but for some reason we go to this place. And, I think sometimes it could take a lifetime to really figure those things out. And you could talk about attachment styles, and you could talk about conditioning, you could talk about all those things. But for me, I really do think there's power in self-conditioning when it comes to the stories we tell ourselves. I'm releasing a new journal in 2 months, and it's all about manifestation, because that's the talk of the town, right? Everyone gets up, every influencer on Instagram gets up and they manifest, and then they go about their day. And I've always been very curious about what that is. But to your point, talking about disconnect, I feel like a lot of times we're manifesting the opposite of what we want because of the stories we're telling ourselves. It's like, don't think of a yellow car. You think of a yellow car. We're telling ourselves to spot the things we don't want to spot. We're telling ourselves the conclusions we don't want. I am unlovable. I'm falling behind. I am untalented, these things. And no wonder we find evidence that supports that. I could find evidence of anything in life. It's a big world. We have a lot of eyeballs and ears, social media. I could find evidence of anything, but I could also find evidence of the thing that is true. And that's why I'm really big on the stories we tell ourselves. Like, how do I expect to be loved if I'm telling myself that I am unlovable? I'm going to continue to find evidence of that until ultimately it's true. And, a lot of it is a leap of faith. It's telling yourself a story that's redeeming, but we're only human. We find what we're looking for. We find evidence of what we tell ourselves. And ultimately, I think a lot of mindfulness comes down to the words we use and the stories we tell ourselves. And that's just pure self-control. But like, I've been doing this for a while, and you can't see because it's in front of the camera, but I got a wall of Post-it notes, and it's literally
Nice.
It's just got words on it, words that I like. Inner peace, delusional optimist. I wrote serotonin down. Like, it's just like weird things that I just like believe in. And I'll land the plane, but like, I just am very big on the self-control we can have on ourselves to tell ourselves a story that actually aligns with the reality we want to live. If we're constantly telling ourselves, describing a reality that can't offer us the things we know we deserve, how do we expect to go out and find it? Well, I think it's a re-engineering of the stories we tell ourselves, because we're only human. You tell yourselves to spot a yellow car, you spot a yellow car. So tell yourself what you want to spot. You'll find evidence that it's possible, that it's true. I always say that, and I promise I'll land it. I'm so passionate about
you land it whenever you want to land the plane. This is your plane, right? I'm your co-pilot.
Cruising at 30,000 feet right now.
Yeah, we are.
We're just going to keep going. Manifesting isn't about what you want. It's about why it's possible for you. And if you could prove to yourself over and over again why you deserve something, then yeah, you can rock and roll with the ups and downs of life, but you know why you deserve it. And like, that's my whole thing. Mindfulness is proving to you why something is true. Not that it's true, but why it's true. That's the whole logical loop. And there's all kinds of things you could do to get that. I keep slapping the mic. Yeah, that's, I'm very passionate about that. The words, the sentences, the paragraphs we use in our heads and out loud and in journals, it's everything. And we can control it. Okay.
We can control it. Of course. He just landed the plane, by the way. So before we roll into a mid-break commercial with our friends from work, I need to now ask you, the journals themselves. I mean, you're about to launch this one about manifestation, and I think putting pen to paper is very powerful. You know, you've done it, I want to say 3 times plus digital journals, if I'm not mistaken. And so this is a very powerful tool. It's something that a lot of people need. We're going to link it in the descriptors below so you guys can check them out. I mean, it started all with the New Mindset Journal, which is great, and allows people to like write things down. And so where have you found it most beneficial to put pen to paper, as you'd said, especially when thinking about how powerful words can be and how important it is to manifest? But doesn't it all just start with pen to paper?
I think so. I really do. It's like, I created those journals in 2020 because I was like, I want to be a journaler. I didn't journal before that. I was like, I want to be a journaler. But then I went out and I bought a dozen journals, like the top journals. And at the time, I was like, this just doesn't really work for me, because they were either one of 2 things. They were either way too prompted, like do this in the morning, come back tonight. It was like, whoa, like pressure, man. And then the other ones were like empty. I was like, share how you're feeling. And that works for some people, but for me, I'm kind of ADD. I need a little bit of a prompt. So I was like, cool, I'll just create my own. That's kind of a good mix of the 2. I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's just kind of a good mix. And I did that, and everything has exploded, and that's amazing that people love and use them. But for me, it's like, it gave me this ability to write down things that I know are true. And for me, the power of journaling certainly is what I get in the moment. Like, oh man, I just wrote that down. That is so real. That is so true. But what I found about journaling, it's the muscle habit that you develop. Because the whole thing about journaling is answering the question of why. And once you close your journal for the day and you go out and live your life, what I found is that you take that with you, so that when you're walking around and you're hit with a moment of anxiety or stress or pressure, you're resorting to how you journal, which is, why am I feeling this way? You're not sweeping it under the rug. So like, what I find about journaling is, the value of journaling is what you get in the moment, but it's also what you carry with you as a lifestyle. And that's what's like, journaling is a catalyst for like life changes. And it's a way to affirm those changes as well. But it's more so about teaching you a mindset of why, a mindset of radical self-honesty. And that's what the journals enable in the moment, but also like permanently. And that's why I'm like all in on journaling.
Just came back from talking about journals with you. I think that it's even more important to figure out where that could then go further. So 2 weeks down the line, we're going to see a manifestation journal, right? But journals aside for a moment, when you think about the podcast, the community you're building, your brand, your human being of self, right? Case Kenny's an entirely different person, which we have to talk about in just a moment with transformation and what keeps you motivated. But when you think about everything that encompasses Case Kenny, where do you want that to go moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out. My mission is I want to make this is like a cliche. I want to make mindfulness cool. And mindfulness definitely is cool. I mean, like it's cool to go to therapy now. Amazing. It's cool to listen to
Sure.
apps like Headspace and Calm. Amazing. But I still think that there is a more, what we can make this more widespread with how people approach mindfulness, especially in dating. I do a lot of dating content, but also just in general. Like I feel like there is a movement and with more men. Like I'd love to reach more men. The majority of people who listen and support and buy from me are women. I'd love to reach more men and just instill like a certain sense of like sensitivity in people, not necessarily
For sure.
with like sharing your feelings is cool, but like it is, but just like with how we operate, like how can we all push ourselves to be more honest with ourselves? You think about friction in life. I think friction in life comes from just lack of honesty with
Hmm.
ourselves.
I
You
agree.
think, you think that could solve a lot of things, but I mean, for me, it's like I want to bring mindfulness to life in cool ways. Like I do a lot of music stuff, and like I think that makes things cool. Like I love house music, and like in my world, what's cooler than house music? I could be misplaced there, but yeah, it's like doing cool stuff, man. Like that's like that. I want like I do these quotes here in Chicago and stuff like that, and it's like, man, here's this guy who, by all objective means, is a regular dude. I like to work out. I like Chipotle and house music. Like, how can we make a million of me that is regular people who are tapping into mindfulness? Like,
Mm.
that's what I want to do. And whether it's through books or journals or music, I don't know, but I'm just gonna keep again pulling on that thread of what makes me excited to get up every morning.
Going back to manifestation for a moment, I love all that. And you say music, we have to talk about Zen disco here in just a second. The bigger picture for you then is it almost sounds like you're playing your cards in a way that you kind of see things unfolding as you play the cards. And what I mean by that is I feel like most people try to have too much of a plan when doing this entrepreneurial thing, and being self-employed and doing your own thing. There's almost always going to be uncertainty with it, but for you, have you found it almost beneficial that you kind of play your cards as you go and see where everything comes out? I mean, you probably wouldn't have done the manifestation journal should the other four not have been great successes,
100%. Yeah, I think there's big benefit in having like standards for yourself and expectations for yourself, but like no real huge game plan. In my world, it makes a lot of sense. In certain worlds, you definitely need a game plan. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like I'm really glad, like my whole thing with like leaving my job, for instance, like my goal wasn't like I have to work for myself. That wasn't my goal. And I think
Mm.
that that's a tough goal to have because it could fall apart quickly. And let me tell you, self-employment kind of sucks. It's like stressful. You got things like self-employment tax, you got your own insurance. Like it's a whole nother world. It is not as, butterflies and rainbows as you might think. But that wasn't my goal. My goal wasn't I need to work for myself because I still got a lot of fulfillment out of side hustling. My goal was to create freedom for myself to create. And that's my whole thing. It's like my goal in life is to create. I love taking something from 0 to 1 or 100 and building
Mm.
it. And that's my goal. And as long as I get to wake up every morning and do that, and as long as I'm proud of myself, that's great. And I've done so many weird and random things over the past 2 years that were not part of the game plan.
Yep.
I've done TV and speaking events and music and all these things that I never thought I would do. And that's so great. And I think it's really benefited me to kind of be flexible and as for like where is the finish line? I don't know. And I think that's good.
Mm. Oh yeah. And then, I mean, through all of it, you must have had to find ways to stay motivated. So that's my next question for you. I mean, when you need the most motivation, what does that look like in your world?
Yeah. So like my motivation is like I'm very stubborn for one. So it's like for me to like put something down is like not really in my playbook because I'm just like, no, I'm not like what? No, I'm not gonna stop. Why? It's just not in my. It's like
Right.
it is very
Right.
frustrating. It's like a good and bad quality for me. But like I again naturally wired that way. But I also think too, it's like I have shifted what I want in life. I used to say things along the lines that everyone says. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled,
Hmm.
which are great goals. But I've shifted from that to I want to be proud of myself.
Sure.
And to me, that's very motivating because I know when I'm not proud of myself. We all do. We'll quickly sweep it under the rug, but we know when we're not proud of ourselves. We know when we did something we shouldn't have done, or we didn't do something we should do. We know what that
Hmm.
moment is. And for me, it's like Case, you say you want to create, you say you want to spread goodness in the world, but here you are and you're not doing this or that. Get up off the couch and do it. I'm like, yes, I'm going to do it. So like, I am very connected with what I do and what I want to do. But just like everyone else, I have up and down days, certainly. And I have little habits here and there that I come back to that really help. But I mean, for me, it's like so much has changed in 2 years.
Right.
It's like, it's so exciting to know that can happen again and again and again.
Oh, and it will, right? It's almost like
Has
it's guaranteed it's going to continue to happen again with your work ethic. And like you had said, even being stubborn. Okay, wait, I was going to ask you about transformation next, but I can't without asking you about how do you walk the fine line of being stubborn and sticking to what you say you're going to do and then falling into maybe a state of disappointment if it doesn't come out how you want. What is that fine line for you?
Yeah, I think honestly, I struggle with that for sure. Because I mean, you talk to anyone who's in a creative field or an entrepreneur, you're always moving the goalposts for yourself.
Right.
And it's funny, in fact, I'm looking over there. I've got these 2 bottles of champagne, and they're these champagne bottles that are the Virgil Abloh edition that came out years ago. And I remember getting them. I remember I got them for clients when I worked at this was years ago. And so like they were expensive bottles. They're like, I don't know, 600 a pop or something. And I was like, I'm going to give them to clients, and I ended up keeping them for myself, I think. Or
it's your going away present from the company after 8
years. If they're listening, it was expensive and everything was fine. But I remember I was like, okay, then I was like, once the podcast hits 1 million downloads, I'm going to pop these success. Once I sell $1 million in journals, I'm going to do this. And I did all those things. And every single time I was like, nah, it's got to be 2 million. It's got to be 5 million. It's got to be 10 million. And they're still sitting there. And I still haven't done it. And it's not like I need to drink that champagne. It's more what it represents, that I keep moving the finish line for myself. And I need to be better about that. So I don't have an answer for that question.
Hey, I have an answer. First of all, I thought you were going to say goalpost. You had like a goalpost in your home. I don't know why I envisioned that. I mean, you had Post-it notes on the wall, so I only assume what else is in there. I also can envision like a dummy that you probably kick every now and then. I'm kidding. I just have something to say, and I never have anything to say on this show. I usually just like to ask the questions. But you, as you're building, let me think about. I'm like having to download while talking, which is why I can't say shit on the show. I'm like, wait, I should ask the next question. No, what I'm downloading is that you are probably really hard on yourself, which is why you need friends like Justin in your life. Are you kidding me? Someone asked me the other day. So I just turned 26 years old. It is now April. No, God, it's March. Sorry, it's March 28th as we're talking on this show right now. And you're episode 99. And I looked at Brian, who's our friend, we just met in LA. We were celebrating my birthday, and he goes, oh, we've done all these celebrations, like happy birthday, happy birthday. I was introducing him to everybody. We kept celebrating, and nothing felt different. I was like, oh, hell, I don't even feel 26, and I don't even feel like I was celebrating. You know why? And I'm just going to tell you this, and anybody who's listening, I learned from Paris Hilton a long time ago that you should treat every day like it's your birthday, within reason. And what I mean by that is there's always something to celebrate, which you're probably really good at. And so I just want to tell you, like, token of friendship, like you always have me to like pop that champagne bottle for you, because I'm like, you know what I mean?
Man, let's do it. Let's get you over here. I got 2 bottles. We get each have a bottle. Yeah, I think that's so right, man. I mean, it's like, again, to our whole point, we know that we need to celebrate the journey. Otherwise, we're going to look back one day and we'll be like, man, that was it. What's going on?
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know what episodes you listen to, but like the past month, I've done more episodes than I ever have before on being present in life, because I am like very amped up about not regretting my in-between moments in life. Because I think about life, it's like life really is pretty simple. You have ups, you have downs, and then you have everything in between. And let's be real, the ups are probably infrequent, and hopefully the downs are also infrequent. So you got all these moments in life that are seemingly kind of arbitrary, boring, whatever. I call them in-between moments. And if we're not appreciating them, I just know we're going to regret it. So like I've done all these episodes on it. And one last anecdote, it's like I did an episode the other day. It's March Madness. So I was watching like old interviews for some reason. It was like on the algo on Instagram. And it was this interview with this guy who played at Boston College. He was a player, and it was in like 2016. So like they were eliminated from the tournament, and he was a senior, and he was doing a press conference. So it was like his last interview. And the guy asked him, he said, what are you going to remember most about playing at Boston College? And his answer was just getting food with the guys. That was his answer. D1 basketball, biggest stage in the world, being interviewed. And that was his answer. And I was like, man, that kind of like got emotional, because I was like, what he just described are the in-between moments in our life, not the ups, not the downs, not the wins or losses. And if we don't start to appreciate that, life's going to pass us by fast. And maybe it's because I'm turning 34 in 2 weeks. I was like, no, I am not, I am not going to regret these moments. You talking about stubborn and like amped up. It's like, I was like, no, sir. So
That's the
anyway,
best way to be stubborn about that, though. You're right. Like, I'm going to be present. My foot is down and my decision is made. 34 not. We're also both Aries. That's why we get along. Right? You're Aries. Is that your sign?
I am an Aries, man. I learned a lot about being an Aries this week. I did a interview with the New York Post. Their like resident astrology expert gave me the skinny on everything about me, because she had like my birth chart. And I was like, man, I don't know. I'm not really bought into astrology. I was like, holy moly, this is accurate.
Whoa. Just imagine your ancestry. Wait, here we go though. I want to ask you about transformation now. So in just the last, I mean, what is that? Now, is it a year? I mean, 2021 to now, that's probably not even been a full year of when things exploded for you and you started really taking off, right?
I mean, it's been like like a year and a half from
year and a half. Okay.
Really start, like I started selling the journals in like June of 2020.
Right.
Like
right.
First year, like I just throw numbers out there because they don't mean much to me, but I sold like $2 million of journals in the first year. Just as a
That's incredible.
Entrepreneur. And again, I owe a lot to that. Like, crazy to say, to COVID. Like people were like,
of course.
Things.
Yep.
And it blew up. But yeah, I mean, I was in June 2020. So like,
okay. So like a year and a half. Yeah. I mean, just so then tell us a little bit about the transformation in your mind for like the case, Kenny, that was lost when you, not lost, but you were really trying to uncover who you were.
Yeah.
When all this had started in 2018. Then you get to 2021 and things blow up and you find even more purpose in what you're doing and building, right? And then the podcast continues to get millions of downloads and all this attention. And then I get to interview you, right? Because Alex is great and Brian's great. And I just love our people. The question here is, in just a year and a half, that's such a short period of time, how would you describe your positive transformation and how it's benefited you as Case? And then everything else aside for a sec, you as Case, again, the one who was questioning who you were away from the relationships and the job in the last year and a half, where are you in terms of positive transformation?
Yeah. So like everything aside, like the money, the business, the followers, getting verified on Instagram, like cool. But like that really did nothing for me personally, identity wise. Like, yeah, it was validating. And I would be remiss to say it wasn't like, okay, cool, I have proof that this is working. But for me, it's like when I was working that job, when I was 28, 29, I was like very self-conscious of bringing my like passion to life. Like truly, like the people that I hung out with at the time, good people, but it was very like we made fun of guys who like shared quotes. Like we made fun of like the Jay Shetty and Lewis and like the guys in this field. Like we did, like we clowned on them, like not like hateful, but like, oh, like cool, like love yourself, bro. Like we did. And you know, for me, it was like always this like conflict inside of me. It's like, can I really be this guy who wants to make money? I like money. Who likes going to the club? I like going to the club. Who likes nice things, but who also is this like creative, sensitive, vulnerable, life force driven guy? Can I do that? And at the time I was like, well, what are my friends going to think? Like I could post quotes on the internet. Like, oh man, like I don't know if I can do it. It was like this conflict of like self-judgment that was really like at odds with how I identified, like very masculine type A, make money girls type vibe. And ultimately I think through the process I was like, I don't care. Like balance. So you could be a very masculine alpha A type person and do these things. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And people can laugh and joke. And I can be that guy who posts inspirational quotes on the internet, and that's fine. And I know that's like a small thing, but like fear of judgment and also self-judgment is like the most debilitating handcuff we could put on ourselves. And I did for a long time. So I think through the process of things admittedly going very well, I was like, I have proof of this now, which I wish I didn't need that proof to make that personal identity shift. I really wish I could have done it without it. But I mean, having so many people support me and listen and buy and share was like, I have to do this. Like, I have proof. The universe, God, karma, whatever it is giving me proof that I need to chase this further. And, you know, if I have to move past an old kind of immature identity, I'm going to do that, no matter if it's uncomfortable or people might, you know, snicker behind my back. So be it. That's on them. And, you know, I embraced it. And, you know, that was 2-year long journey that I feel like just like condensed like so quick and was so good for me. And that's why COVID was weird, man. It is weird, I suppose. Like,
Yeah, right.
gave me this opportunity to like really just dive into myself.
Yeah, as I hope it did for everybody, even if you're listening right now. I mean, that's just, I was tempted to ask you more about the masculinity part of why you feel like men, particularly, not that this show is called Men of the Hour for that reason, but it's almost like everybody's telling themselves that they have to be a certain way, and everybody's lying to themselves that other people are going to judge them for doing certain things like posting quotes on the internet. But you just answered that by pretty much giving your experience, and I appreciate that, because it's one thing to be vulnerable and just say you've changed and you're a better person, but the description you just gave was very much exactly why and how you're doing what you're doing now. And to admit too that you had to see proof. Not everybody's like that. I feel like it's not all the time someone's like, I had to get $2 million in sales on a journal in order to feel validated as a solopreneur, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, mindset's everything around that. Perspective's everything around that. Oh my God, I just made a joke. He's laughing, y'all. Okay, maybe we should turn this into a comedy show. I've been told I'm funny. I'm not that funny. But you're great, dude. I'm like really obsessed with this conversation, and candidly saying that, I won't even cut that out. The fuck? I think this is great. You're great. You're episode
Fantastic.
99. You're the semi-finale. We have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to share a part of this conversation that means you are literally an episode away from 100 to me, which is not just therapeutic, to your point about doing shows like this on a podcast platform, but now it's like I've been able to build a community. I've been able to interview all these great figures and friends, and you now are going to become a friend from just this show, but also the great things that you're doing on the outside of that I want to support. But as a semi-finale guest, or the man of the hour, I may call you, what's something you've been thinking about lately that you're really excited about that you haven't yet told anyone else that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think for me, definitely the new journal is something that I poured a lot of heart into. It's 400 pages. I've never written 400 pages before. So that was a labor of love, for sure. That's a lot of case. But also, like, I teased it a little bit here, but music, like I'm working on some like really big collaborations with like big name artists. So like, again, I need a different word, but like to make mindfulness mainstream and real and cool, and like bringing in some of these big artists, like we're talking like the top of the top in like EDM, to like be like, whoa, this is cool. And not just like, oh, he supports Calm or Headspace, but like he is supporting vulnerability and sensitivity and being honest and holding yourself to standards, and like these things that just like really motivate me. So like I'm really excited about music. I'm excited. I'm doing more like in-person events. So like I'm doing these like guided mindfulness sessions, and it's just cool. It's just cool to see people do. It's because it's easy to support someone on the internet, of course, and that's the miracle of the internet. It's a different thing to show up and do or buy and complete. Like I love that. The fact that, you know, I've sold so many journals is like, wow, these people here, this long list of people bought a product that now is part of their daily life, and they're investing in their own mindfulness or their closure or their clarity or their anxiety or whatever it is they're trying to address. Like that is freaking dope. And I love that. And to play a small role in that is amazing. So I'm just going to continue to create things that help people in that way, and that like make me excited. Like I love house music. I've always been that idiot who goes to Lollapalooza and takes my shirt off in the front and is just an absolute moron. Like I just love it. It just brings me to life. So I was like, I can't just be a guy who, you know, does things because other people want it. I need to create something for myself. So I was like, music. I am going to combine music and mindfulness. I'm going to make it dope and cool. And like what better gift is there in life to be able to do something like that? So I always say, like, I am so privileged to be able to do this, but like that makes me excited, knowing that I can wake up in the morning tomorrow and create whatever I want. And if it helps me and helps other people, then there's nothing I could ever say is not going well in my life.
I don't argue guests after a final question, but I have to argue that you're playing a big part, not a small part in all of that. When you tell us that people have a journal that's a part of their daily lives and all that, I heard you say that you're glad to play a small part. You play a very big part in that. Is why I can bring you on a show like this, and I'm very proud to do so. And to have trusted me with this conversation, I wanted to thank you. To anybody who clicked play, if you'll just click on that little more button in the descriptor, you're going to see everything Case and I just uncovered, including links to his website, to his social, to his journals, to his new music with Zen Disco, and that incredible platform. I didn't even know that was a big thing, right? Like mixing music and like house music. I don't even know what that stuff is. And I found out in 2 hours of us just, prior to talking. And it's not just a best-selling journal. I think the whole idea of mindset, we hit on it, but essentially that's the brand. It's mindset. It's bettering yourself for a better world. And Case is all about that. So Case Kenny, my friend, my new friend, someone that I cannot wait to uncover a relationship with and see where everything goes for you. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes and trusting me with this entire, at this point, we have not even done something probably over an hour, just because I want to be respectful of people's time. So whatever minutes is on this podcast when y'all clicked play, Case Kenny, that was him. And thank you again.
Thank you for having me on, man. This is fantastic.